There's a local author from Spencer County, Indiana, originally from Warwick County, who is our guest in this edition of WJTS in.form. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Joining me in the studio is Kenneth Edward Barnes. Kenneth, welcome to the show.
Glad to meet you.
Well, you are a local author, and you have some book signings coming up.
Yes.
But we want to talk about, this is just a few of the books that you've written?
Yeah, I have 77 titles right now. I have 50, well, I'm working on the 59th paperback. All of them's available in ebooks, and most of them's available in paperbacks.
Okay. And so if somebody wanted to get your books, are they carried locally somewhere, or is it best to go through Amazon?
It's best to go to Amazon. Mm-hmm. You can Google my full name, Kenneth Edward Barnes, or you can go to Amazon, look up my books, and they're all there.
Okay, now you have two book signings coming up?
Yes.
One in Ferdinand, one in Boonville.
Boonville.
Okay. Let's give the dates and times of those.
Okay. In Ferdinand Public Library, it's September the 7th from 6:30 to 8:30, and that's Eastern Standard Time. And in Boonville, it's September the 14th from 6 to 8 Central Standard Time.
Now, you are an author who has written many, many, many books. Is there a certain kind of book you write, or do you write a little bit of everything?
I write everything. I started out writing poems back in 1978. In fact, Marcia Yockey read a few lines of my poem on her weather forecast, and she's mentioned in a couple of my books. And she said I was an aspiring writer back then, and I started writing poems, and I'd go to churches and recite them, and many times everybody would be moved to tears, and I thought maybe I have a gift for writing. Mm-hmm. So actually one of my books is called In Search of a Golden Sparrow, and it was written because of a prayer and answer to the prayer. Because I was out of work, and I thought, I went to churches and recited poems, and people would be moved. Mm-hmm. So I thought, maybe I have a gift for writing. So I said a little simple prayer, like, Lord, if you want me to be a writer, give me something that will touch people's hearts. And right after that, I found a white sparrow that had gold wing patches. And so I wrote this book, In Search of the Golden Sparrow. 2 weeks later, I found one with it that was pure gold. Its
Really?
picture's on the cover.
Really? Okay. And I'm not sure if that's one of the books you have here. Yeah, there it is, The Golden Sparrow.
Yeah.
Let's talk about some of the books you have, because we have limited time, and
Yes.
we want to talk about certain ones. Your number one seller is this book on the top.
Mysteries of the Bible. Yep. And it's got all kind of questions that people ask. What happens when you die? Are there going to be a secret rapture? Who's the two witnesses? I mean, it has all kind of questions answered. I've studied the scripture since I was 14 years old. And I search for the truth, not what other people say. So evidently it's popular.
And this is your number one seller?
Yes.
Okay. On the Kenneth Edward Barnes top seller list, this is number one.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you always write, is everything you write spiritual, or some of it's fiction, nonfiction?
I have a lot of books about the Bible, the Rude Awakening, the Coming Invasion, all kind of things. But I write all kind of things. Arkansas River Monster, I have 4 in that series. It's really popular. If you add all those 4 up, it's actually probably number 2.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
right, sure.
So, and I have a complete series. I have it with me somewhere here. And so it's available too.
Well, let's talk about some of the other books that you have. I believe you told me this was your number 2 seller?
This is number 2. This is A Cabin in the Woods. This is a picture of my house. And I live in Perry County. I think you.
Oh, I think I said Spencer County. Yeah. Right.
My folks were from Spencer County, and I have a book about that too, the Long Pond Road. But this is number 2, A Cabin in the Woods. I built the cabin with just a hammer and a handsaw, and I lived there in a camper during the winter with no running water, no heat. Outside restroom like they did in the 50s, because when I was a kid, the old school in Yankeetown actually had outside restrooms. I mean, I guess I'm in 2 worlds. In fact, when I lived in a camper, it was like 2 worlds. I worked at Sears, had to wear a tie and use computers, and yet I lived like they did 100 years ago. So, and I talk all about it. Marcia Yockey's mentioned here because she was a big influence. And I don't know how many people remember Joe Salania, but he was a newspaper, he had a newspaper column and a TV segment on the news. And he was an inspiration. I used to sit and talk to him all the time. He used to squirrel hunt right behind my house when I was a child. So he was a big inspiration, and he probably got me into writing because just like him, I become an outdoor columnist. So I've written for magazines and newspapers, but it tells my whole life story, how I struggled to be a writer and all the obstacles I had to go through to get there.
I'm sure that's a tough road to hoe to be a writer.
Oh, especially. I'm a member of Who's Your Outdoor Writers, and In fact, I've won that book right there, is Barnes Summer in the Outdoors, and it's got a lot of my column articles and magazine articles. And I actually won a couple awards for humor, so I write humorous stuff too. And like I said, I write so many things. There's children's stories, plays for children. This book.
Yeah, let's talk about this book. There's an interesting story behind that.
This book, when I was a substitute teacher, I had this book, and it wasn't published yet, and I asked the children, I gave them a list of titles, about a dozen titles, and overwhelmingly they chose Invasion of the Dregs, and I mentioned it in there. The kids from Southeast Du Bois and North Spencer schools chose the title. It's about time on Earth before humans were here, and these little people are called gossets, and all these strange animals. This is a Monothorian dragon on the cover. King Zedar is on the back. That's actually me sitting there. My brother did Photoshop and put me in a king's uniform, and there's a giant tortoise they rode, and there's a rainbow bird, and there's gralls and triodons, all kind of animals in there I had to invent.
I was going to say, how do you come up with these names? How do you come up with these?
Well, ever since I was a child, you know, sometimes I made good grades in school when I was interested in it, but a lot of times I was sitting reading encyclopedias instead of doing my homework. So I had all this knowledge about prehistoric animals and things, and I've studied nature since I'm an outdoor writer. I've studied nature ever since I was a child. And so it just come to me. I mean, triodons they're a giant vulture with 3 horns, like a triceratops on their beak, and thunder beast is a giant, like the largest mammal that ever lived, but it has horns, and they ride, the king rides it. I mean, in a Monothorian dragon, it's got 1 horn on it. And actually, I did the artwork. You know, really? I'm not a great artist, but I had to do this with a computer and go in there and draw every scale on it.
Now, what's a dreg? I mean, where'd you come up with that?
A dreg, well, that's how come dregs got a bad name today. Because I go back in time before anybody was on the earth, and the dregs were actually the ancestors of the abominable snowmen. And they invade the Troves territory and steal their cattle and sheep and drive the Troves out. Well, the Troves go to the Gossets village and steal their winter supply of food. So the Gossets have to make this long trek. They live on an island continent called Adrius, and that was forerunner of the lost island of, can't even think of the name today. But anyway, they make this trek all the way up there to Mount Morad to get to King Zedar. And I've updated this book, and it's called The Lost Land of Adrius now. Okay. But most of my early books I've updated and retitled it.
It's interesting how you come up with characters and you have to.
Well, I've been writing for 30 years. So.
Well, do you like? Where do you get your ideas? Do you a dream come to you, or are you walking through the woods? You go, hey, that leaf looks interesting.
Oh, sometimes my wife and I were taking a trip one day. I mean, down the trails, and I thought, you know, I've had this idea for years about a time when the day that time stood still, and these couples in this cabin area. That's one of the popular books. Many of my books I've got 5-star ratings on, and so that inspires me to go over them, maybe make them better. And
but now this is another one of your popular books.
I've had some good reviews on it, but no one knows about it hardly. It's a very new book.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody can see this. When you first look at it, you probably can't see it. I didn't, but it's got a picture. This is a tornado. It hit Owensboro in January the 3rd, 2000. And a cousin of mine took this picture. He was standing by the Blue Bridge in Owensboro on the High River, and he took this picture after the tornado passed. And if you look close, you can see eyes, nose bridge, nostrils, mouth, and a bruise on the cheek. Inside, I've got the picture again. It's a little more clear. You can see the beard. Mm-hmm. It looks like the face of Christ. And the title is, Why Does God Let Bad Things Happen? So, like I said, Mysteries of the Bible is my #1 book, so I have a lot of books about religion, and I have one, Do Pets Go to Heaven?
Now, this is one that's why I said you're from Spencer County. Well, I was wrong. You're from
Yes, my folks were from Spencer County. I had this idea 30 years ago. My dad used to tell me stories. This talks about the great eclipse that happened on June 8th, 1918. I believe it was June 8th. And my grandmother used to talk about it all the time. She said the chickens went to roost. Now, when I was a little child, about 5 years old, I had no idea what she was talking about. So it got so dark one day, the chickens went to roost. And it must have been something astounding to those people back then, because they didn't know what it was even called.
Sure.
And the 37 flood, my dad was a little child, and he almost died in it because everybody thought the family was evacuated, but they weren't. And just luckily, a neighbor come by in a boat and rescued them, or they would have died.
Yeah.
And that's just my great-grandparents on my dad's side.
So is a book like this based on fact with a little fiction?
Now
or is
this one's based on fact, but
Okay.
since I didn't live back then, I had to make up some of the things they
Sure,
said.
you had to embellish it somewhat. Yes.
And this is a prequel to Life on Pigeon Creek and the updated version, Life Along Little Pigeon Creek, because that's about my life, early life growing up in Warwick County and all the unique people I knew. We had a neighbor that was on the old TV show To Tell the Truth, and she had a quadruple Grand National Champion show cats in the United States. And she was our neighbor. My mother worked for her. She just lived a quarter mile down the road. And we had Yankee Town's Tarzan. I mean, he dressed like Tarzan, went around. I mean, how many kids have a real Tarzan in their life? But I did as a child, and it's in Life on Pigeon Creek. And that's one of the books I'll be having at the book signing.
Okay, yeah, so let's talk again about the book signings. They are coming up in September.
Yes.
And the dates again and the times and places.
In Ferdinand, it'd be September the 7th, 6:30 to 8:30. And in Boonville, it'd be on the 14th, a week later, from 6:30 to 8:30. I'm sorry, 6 to 8 Central Standard Time. But I have so many books, there's no way I can have copies of all of them. That's why I'm trying to do this stuff early, so they can order them from Amazon, make sure they have the copy they want, because I'll have a few of the most popular books, but with almost 60 books, there's no way I can have all of the books. So you can go online on Amazon, you can actually look inside a book, you can look on the back and read it, you can read reviews and see if you like it or not. Some of the books are very popular, like Madam President. I have 5-star ratings and I've had 1-star ratings because people either like it or they don't like it. So,
yeah. Now, if they go to Amazon, they just type in your name, Kenneth Edward Barnes, and
Yes.
they need to put all three.
Yes, Kenneth Edward Barnes.
Okay, and they'll find your books, or they could just put down one of the book titles.
Title. It helps to put my name beside the title because you can't copyright a title, and there's a lot of books that has the same titles.
Sure. Okay. So all these books are available online.
Yes.
Through Amazon, or you can contact Kenneth if you happen to know him.
Yes.
He lives in Perry County, so you might know him. Thank you for coming in.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Good luck with all the books that you have coming up. A lot of books available. Buy them on Amazon, or better yet, stop by and see him at the book signings coming up in Ferdinand and in Warwick County. Kenneth, thank you for being our guest.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching WJTS. We are local people watching local people.